We are incredibly enriched by our volunteer corps. I'm probably understating it a bit, but I have been active in the volunteer not-for-profit world for more than 40 years. There is no way for me to express or share the enrichment and the joy that those activities have given me and my wife Sherry. My life has been ever so much more meaningful simply because of the leadership and of the scholarship that I was exposed to in the process. When I thought about the things that inspired me as a volunteer, I asked our board of directors and our staff if we could find a way to give our Make a Difference Wisconsin volunteers some of the same kind of enrichment that I was blessed with in my volunteer life. That is the thought behind this evening's program. Our staff would be disappointed if I didn't tell a story. And this is a story from which I've learned a great deal. I was part of a new group that was just starting out. And at our first meeting, the leader asked each of us to share something about ourselves. And as you can imagine, we all did pretty much the same thing. I was born in Milwaukee. I went to college at the University of Illinois. I married my wife Sherry in 1964. Our 3 children came a few years later. I work in real estate. I do residential mortgages, etc. That was the general outline that went all the way around the room. And the leader then said something I've carried around with me for a very long time. He said, "Thank you very much. I now understand your geography, the outer surface of your lives." He says, "Now would you please tell me something about your geology? The things that move you to laugh and to cry. The things that really matter. The things that touch your soul." So tonight, I want to tell you a bit about both the geography and the geology of our speaker. Curt Culver is the president and CEO of MGIC. He's a UW-Madison graduate with both a bachelor's in business administration and an MS degree in real estate finance and urban land economics. His career in the mortgage insurance business began in 1976, and he joined MGIC in 1982. And he is in the process of leading his company back to profitability, which is a long and difficult road. And I'm certain that he will succeed. But that's his geography. His geology is what brings him here tonight. When I first called Curt in 2006 to ask for a meeting because I was trying to put together this program on financial literacy for high school students, he opened his doors wide open. Before I had a chance to sit down in his office, he said, "Yes, yes, yes. MGIC will provide volunteers. I will personally help recruit, and we will agree to support the organization with a 3-year grant of $10,000 a year." When we needed leadership or help on something specific, Curt has never said no. Except, of course, to join me in a golf game. I know of no business executive in our community with a bigger heart. His passion for improving our community is well known. He sits on numerous boards, too many to mention. A number of years ago, I heard Curt talk about things that mattered in his life. And I asked him, would he consider sharing some of those thoughts tonight? His response, "Lloyd, I would be honored." Curt, let me turn the podium over to you.
Congratulations. It's really nice. You're making a difference in a lot of kids' lives, as you all are. I'd also like to introduce my wife, Sue, who happens to be right here, just to show you how much she loves me. She was playing golf on the 15th hole with a good round going, running out of time to get here, so she picked up her ball there and came in. I don't know if her husband would be quite that loving. So thank you, dear. A couple notes before I get into what I'd like to share with you. As Lloyd mentioned, that meeting in 2006, it's funny when he came in, because this was something I have had the pleasure of lecturing in the School of Business in Madison since 1991. So 21 years. November 7th is my next date. I just talked to the professor this week, actually. And it's a real estate finance. It's like 450 kids, young adults. I have to watch them, but they are so young. And as part of that, I mean, I talk about our company, but I also talk about life and how to get a job and business ethics and stuff they usually don't hear from a CEO, I think. But as part of that, we talk about the things that you're dealing with in the classroom, the FICO scores, credit cards, interest rates. And I was stunned, absolutely stunned, at the lack of knowledge in that area. And the impact that that makes in those young adults' life later on, if they're running up debt, not paying off bills, and the impact that FICO score has relative to interest rates, your home mortgage, your property and casualty, anything today. And they just didn't have a clue. And that's why when Lloyd came in and started talking about this, that's why it was yes, yes, yes. Both corporately and personally, how can we help? Because these are important things that aren't being taught today that need to be taught. And so I'm so thrilled at what Lloyd started and Brenda has carried on and all of you are carrying on, because it really does help these young adults in their lives with things that they're going to face later on. They don't understand the significance at the time, but they will. They will. Now, let me, on my presentation, I was giving a speech to the Wisconsin Mortgage Bankers Association. Lloyd and I aren't sure, somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. And there's I think, a funny story regarding that. Our account managers were responsible for getting the speakers. Generally, MGIC in Wisconsin just does a lot of business, so our account managers usually get the speakers. And the year before I spoke, Dawn, one of our account managers, called me and said, "Kurt, we're really in a jam. We need a speaker for the Wisconsin Mortgage Bankers Association." And I'm thinking, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I can help you out. She said, "Could you get your brother?" Sure enough, so I followed Craig in that. And we both had a ball doing it too. So, relative to the subject that I'm going to talk about now, I know we have a number of MGICers here. I saw Sandy and Ryan, and Jerry and Ernie. I don't know if others are here. But when you step into the role of a CEO, which I did now 13 years ago, I guess, it's kind of weird because you're used to coming from a job where you really had responsibilities, direct line responsibilities to do stuff. And then when you get into being the CEO role, you're managing an organization that does it. So what you have to do is motivate and point that organization in the right direction relative to the culture that you would like to have as you do business. And so as I looked at that, and a number of the MGICers, this is going to be a theme they've heard a number of times from me before, but it's, you know, what I thought about then was, well, what can I do relative to the culture of the company? I mean, I want a learning organization, I want a fair organization, and I want an ethical organization. And from that culture should allow us to compete at the very highest levels in a standard that's worthy of MGIC, my predecessors that I've had at this great company that I now lead today. And as part of that, what I really felt by doing that I wanted to make every person within our company feel like they make a difference, because they do. They really do. So from that, this is the genesis of the thoughts I'm going to share with you. I really have a couple things that I stress to our people when we're together, and I think should be important in all our lives as we do our business or live our lives. And the first of that gets back to this point of making a difference, that we should all be leaders. And when I talk about leadership, it's not talking about a title. It's talking about people that have talent and put that talent into action. And one of the examples I use to stress that is one of our parking attendants at MGIC, Jim, who, if you've ever come to our building, I mean, you wouldn't normally think of a parking attendant being a leader in a company. But I'll tell you, Jim makes such a difference for anyone who comes to visit MGIC. Anyone who comes to my office, I can tell you, raves about. They've learned everything they can know about the company in that short step that Jim's led them into the doors to get there. And he's such a great representative in making a difference for our company. So leadership, not about titles, it's not about power either. What it is about is people that have a purpose for what they do every day and carry that out with a passion. And that passion, I mean, if you deal with people, if you have a purpose in your life, you have that passion. One of the things I stress when I am in Madison and these young kids looking at getting an occupation and they all want to make $1 million as soon as they get out of school, and I talk to them about, you know what, that's a worthy goal, but you'll never do it if you don't love what you do. You need to have a passion for what you do, and then everything else takes care of it in your life. So have that purpose, have that passion, and things will take care of the rest of your life. And to have that passion, what I've found in my life is you can never stop learning. You need to be, what I say, massively competent. One of the things of the companies that I started with, I've only had 2 companies I worked with other than the 12 years I spent in the restaurant business. But with Verix, which I started without a graduate school, which was at the time the second largest private mortgage insurance company, and I received a lot of promotions along the way, as I did at MGIC, without ever applying for any of those jobs. And I always wonder, well, you know, why are all these good things happening to me? But the thing that I always did was I learned everything I could about everything in the company and about the jobs that I was doing. I became massively competent relative to what the company does, the departments I work in, what other people do. I learned a lot about that. From that, I controlled my career path. And one of the things when we survey our co-workers at MGIC, one of their frustrations is there's no longer a career path in today's world, in today's companies, and there isn't. There really isn't. I mean, I've been blessed. Our company has an average tenure of 19 years that people have worked at our company. I've got a luncheon in a month from now at Service Awards where we honor people that have hit their 5-year anniversary with the company, so we have people from 5 to 40 years. We have 3,035 years of MGIC experience in that room for lunch. And the reason that we have that success is they've controlled their careers. They have become so knowledgeable about what they do and how they do it that they're too valuable to a company not to promote them and not to work to move them forward in their careers. So as I talk to our people, as I do with the students, I just say learn as much as you can about everything you can in the companies you work. You will control your career path. The company won't control you, and that's the way it should be. The second area that I talk about is taking ownership. And the key to that, to me, is a very simple concept: do the right thing. Every single person in your company every single one of you knows what the right thing to do when a situation presents itself. And yet, way too often, companies have layers and all kinds of stuff within the company that prevents that from happening. And people, for fear, don't do what they think is the right thing, and yet they're the closest to the action. So you want to free up your organization. You want to free up every person to do the right thing. And I will tell you, I would hope that if you talk to our MGIC people, that when Curt's no longer at MGIC, and they say, "Remember Curt?" And they'd say, "Yeah, he's the guy that always told us to do the right thing." It makes such a difference when you can free up the organization to do the right thing. And it makes it so much better for all of us if we have that freedom to do the right thing. I also talk about taking responsibility for actions. Well, if there's one thing that I find the most difficult today in dealing with younger people is that lack of accountability in dealing with issues, that something goes wrong and people don't own up to it. And there's nothing more difficult for me when that happens. I try to preach within our company that failure is inevitable. Failure should be welcome. As I talk about it, it's the highway to success. How can you get ahead if you don't fail first in getting there? If you don't take chances to make a difference, how can you ever get ahead? You're always going to fail at something you do. I can tell you every day I have something go wrong. And believe me, the last 5 years, it's been a lot of stuff. But it is what it is. You deal with it. I will tell you one of the things that my parents drilled into us in working at the various restaurants that I grew up with, and that has been carried forward with Culver's, is when you make a mistake, own up to it. And I will tell you, when you do that, when somebody gets something wrong at Culver's, they fill out a comment card. Those are, as a board member, I can tell you, those are followed up very quickly and correctly. Because if you take something that you did wrong and make it right for a person, you have a customer for life. Absolutely. You're almost better off failing initially, so you have that opportunity to make it better. And it never fails. But the reality is you have to take responsibility that, yes, I did something went wrong, and I'm responsible for that. It's not the end of the world. It's then how you deal with it that dictates how things will happen. So if we can get an organization, and one of the things that I believe we have at MGIC, it's an organization where people will take blame individually, but that will share credit. And you get an organization like that, you can move mountains. And that's what I think the culture at our company is. I think also as part of that taking responsibility, you have to have strong principles. Again, here I was blessed, and Sue will weigh in on this also, with two of the most wonderful parents that anyone could have. They were very, very hard workers. A dad with some of the restaurants would work 20 hours a day, 6 days a week. We, on that 7th day, Craig and I would take over the restaurant. I'm thinking of it now, 2 teenagers running the restaurant, and Mom and Dad, we gave them Monday nights off and they'd go out. But they were such hard workers, and they had such strong principles. And I preach that at our company all the time. Have strong principles. The things like honesty, respect, fairness, integrity. These are all concepts that not only should you do your business by, but you should live your life by. As Dad would tell me, those principles are to us like roots are to trees, and without them, you'll get blown over. And there's nothing more true than that, than those strong principles that I was blessed to see my parents demonstrate every day to the 3 kids. And finally, and it's become way too common in our system and our culture today, is never accept mediocrity. I'm just surprised that way too often we'll accept mediocrity, or mediocrity happens way too often. And we should not accept that. We should never, as any of us dealing in our own world, should ever present ourselves in a mediocre situation. That's just not what we can do best. I'm stunned at the amount of times when I buy something and I'm the one that says thank you rather than the one that's selling me something. So never ever settle on mediocrity. My final point that I talk with our people about, and anyone else who will listen with me, is have fun at work and life. Again, what we do day in and day out, I mean, this is our life. If you didn't enjoy what you do, and I talked this very bluntly with our managers and others at MGIC, if you're not enjoying it, please work somewhere else. I mean, because if you're not enjoying work, you will not be a good coworker. You just can't be. You cannot sustain that long term. So you need to enjoy your work and your life. And as part of that, what has been so important to me, and I've had a chance to really live it these last few years, is balance. Balance on what you do. I mean, balance between your family, which should be very important in your life, your work, which should be very important in your life, your hobbies. As Lloyd mentioned, I like to play golf. Lloyd likes to play golf. That's a very important part of my life. My religion is an important part of my life. My charitable activities are a very important part of my life. My community. How do I make a difference in the community is a very important part of my life. All these things should be part of what you do day in and day out. Nothing should dominate within that. And it sounds crazy for a CEO to say, I don't want you working here 80 hours a week. Because you know what, long term, again, that's not sustainable. You need balance in your life to enjoy your life, and you will be the best coworker you could be, and you're going to be the best person, more importantly, you can be. And so that balance is so important to me relative to how people make a difference in their life. And my little strategy on that is the 5 H's that I talk about. And the first is humor. And I had some wonderful role models at MGIC on that aspect that were wonderful, wonderful executives, more talented than me. And the beauty of those very talented individuals was they could laugh at themselves. They never took themselves seriously. They took their work very seriously, but they never took themselves seriously. And that is so important, that sense of humor, relative to, again, how you live your life. Sue tells me the reason she married me is I had a great sense of humor. I mean, I thought it was my looks, but no, it was my sense of humor. But truly, the next is health. And you know, I'm 60 years old now, and stuff doesn't work like it used to work. And you got to have a lot of tests, and you got to work out. And one of the things that I did do at MGIC was put in a fitness center because I felt that was so important relative to your mind. If you got a healthy body, you have a healthy mind. And I can also tell you, I'm a great believer in health insurance, that the only way we'll ever control health insurance costs is on the front end by preventing it from happening, that we deal on a wellness basis rather than dealing on a medicine basis. But I can tell you, if you don't deal with taking care of yourself today, you're going to spend your time in a hospital later. So health is such an important part. And my father was blind the last 5 years of his life. That's something he could have prevented, although I must tell you, he had a detached retina when we had one of our restaurants called the Farm Kitchen, which was a big business. And Dad didn't allow that to heal properly. Anyone who's had that knows you need to sit with your head down for a period of time, and Dad didn't do that, and ultimately led to blindness for my father later in life. And I will tell you, Dad would have traded every Culver's we had for his 2 eyes back, for 1 eye back. So if you don't take care of your health, it's a very long process later. The next is honesty. I think it's the bedrock of anything you do in your life, whether it's personal or business. That has to be there. The trust that goes along with honesty will overcome every other obstacle that you have. The reason I am at MGIC is that 30 years ago, and it was 30 years ago, this summer, we had a new CEO at the Barracks, and this was a gentleman that I had played golf with prior, and he didn't count all his strokes, and he didn't pay his bets. And those are 2 big problems for me. But they demonstrated to me a lack of honesty. And where is this company going to go if this individual does that with me? And that is going to be a demonstration of where this company is taken longer term. And so that, for a crazy reason, was the reason I went and interviewed at MGIC, and they offered a position, and here I am 30 years later, and Barracks went out of business 5 years after I left it. And it just shows, and again, for lots of reasons, but it just shows the importance of honesty, both in how you do your business and how you live your life. Hustle, one of the key things, and our two kids could tell you this is something I talk about a lot, or have talked about a lot about with them, was, and the phrase I use relative to hustle is, if you want something different, you have to do something different. And way too often in our society, everyone is waiting for someone else to do something for them, or that it'll take care of itself. And I will tell you what, it never takes care of itself, it always gets worse. So if you really want to change something, you have to do it, not let the world change. Because if you let that happen, it will overrun you. So if you want something different, you have to do something different. And finally, humility. It's been one of the hallmarks of MGIC since the day I competed against MGIC for 6 years, and I've worked there 30 years since. So the 36 years that I have experienced has been the wonderful humility that the people, the co-workers that I work with day in and day out exhibit. And we have a little phrase at MGIC that goes, nothing fails like success. Nothing fails like success. And there's nothing more true than that statement, from the aspect, if you look at anything in life, and I use sports because I'm a big sports fan, how often is it that teams repeat? Not very often. Why is that? Because they get a little cocky, they get a little arrogant. And if you get that way in your life or in your business, you will fail. And yet it happens year in and year out. And one of the great things that I've had the pleasure of working with my coworkers has been that none of them forget that statement. Very, very important in how you get ahead in life, to always remember your place in life. And so those are my thoughts relative to balance and how I achieve it in my life and the difference that it makes. And I'd like to close with a quote by Leo Roston. This is something that I found many years ago, and it truly is. If there's one thing that I would say summarizes how I feel my life, I hope, is judged when that judgment day comes, it's summed up in this quote. And it has even more special meaning that over the past few years I've lost both my parents, and my mother had heard this at, very special to me, had heard this at one of the talks I had given, and she said, Kurt, whenever that day comes and you get to talk about me in church, would you use this? And I said I would. So, let me close with this that I think is true about all of you in this room. And as I say, it's by Leo Roston. I cannot believe that the sole purpose of life is to be happy. Rather, I think the purpose of life is to be useful, to be responsible, to be compassionate. It is, above all else, to matter, to count, to stand for something, to have made some difference that you lived at all. To have made some difference that you lived at all. What could be a better legacy for any of us than to have someone say that about you? And I will tell you what you are doing with this organization in helping change young people's life, young people that you'll probably never meet or later on in life get an opportunity for them to say thank you to you, although you'll be surprised how many of them you do run into. There is nothing more nobler, nothing better, nothing that makes a difference more than people like you that change lives. Thank you.